Can y'all hear me? Can you hear me? Is it picking up? Picking up? I'll just make sure I walk into the thing. All right, we're ready to start now. All right, everybody. My name is Cedric, and I'm with Regenesis CDC. This is my co-worker, Miss Anita Beasley. And we're going to talk a little bit about credit. I know we kind of already started getting into it a little bit from the last one, so I want to make sure that we go through it. Credit can take, in itself, can be a 4 to 5 hour class just by itself. But we're going to just try to, in the sake of time, go for an hour, try to get done in 45 minutes, give y'all some questions, just to take some if you have them. Barbara, I'm going to piggyback off of her. She did a wonderful job talking about budget, but I don't want y'all to look at these as two separate things. Budget and credit go hand in hand, just like credit and budget go hand in hand. If for some reason your budget is off, it will absolutely affect your credit. If your credit is over leveraged and you have too much credit, it's going to affect your budget. So these things work together hand in hand. With budgeting, money, managing your money, and credit, if you get these two things down, you can do anything else financially. So just think of these two, like we said, a back to basics class. This is your foundation. If you're building your house, this is where you want to build your rock solid foundation at, and the rest can come on top of that. But if you can master your money management and you can master credit, you can do everything else. So I know we have some people that probably want to start their own business, buy houses, achieve all the wonderful dreams you have. To do that, if you master credit and budget, you'll be good. So we're gonna go ahead and start and get into it. Definitely want to make time for questions at the end, so I'm gonna try to move quickly. So just starting. Base level, ground level, we don't want to talk over anyone's head. What is credit? So a credit score is just simply a number based on information in the credit report. So the report just shows you your habits. You want to make sure your credit report is accurately reflecting what you do in life. So the score is important, but the score is just a reflection of what's in the report. So it predicts how well you'll pay your bills. So when you're going to get a car loan, you're going to get a house loan, they're going to pull your credit because they want to know how likely are you to pay me back. Just like if you lend somebody $20, we all know the person that if you give this money, you might as well count it's gone because they're not going to pay you back. But we also know people who say, if they really ask for it, I know they'll pay me back. They got good friend or good payment history. It's the same thing with your credit. So people with higher credit scores are likely to present lower risk to creditors, so that's why you want to work on having a high credit score, simply because it opens up a world of finance to you. So what's in your credit report? It has your identifying information, your social, It's gonna have your address, name. You wanna make sure all of those things are right. Your debts, any accounts that you have open, any closed accounts you have open, will show on your credit report. Public record. Public record is things like bankruptcies, liens, judgments. Those will show on the credit report. And anytime you apply for a new credit account, it's called an inquiry, and those will also show on your credit report, so we can see who you've applied for or tried to get credit with. So there's 3 major credit bureaus. There's more reports out there. There's more than just these 3, but these are the 3 we want to focus on for today: Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. And so all of them generate a credit score. And what we're going to talk about today are FICO scores, and we're going to talk a little bit more about it. But with these credit reports, they all can be a little different score-wise, so we're going to kind of get into some details of it. So, who's going to use your credit report? Why do they need it? What are they looking for? So, of course, a financial institution, a bank, is going to look at your credit, whether you're opening a bank account, applying for a mortgage, applying for a car, anything. They're going to look at it because they want to know what type of consumer you are. Renting, as you know, a lot of landlords pull credit just to see how you pay your other bills. Because naturally, if you pay your other bills on time, they'll feel better about getting their rent paid. Utility companies, as we know, Duke Power, Piedmont Natural Gas, some of these places will require a higher deposit for lower scores. So if you have a good credit score, a lot of times you don't have to put anything down to open up your account. But if you don't, that's when you start to see you might have to put 100, 200 down. Cell phone companies now look at credit. They want to see how are you paying your bills. Have you paid your other credit accounts, or have you paid your other cell phones that you had in the past? Insurance. They have their own kind of insurance score that they use. It's not necessarily the same as a credit report, but they take credit into the picture, and they generate a score based on everything they see about how likely you are to insure, how easily you are to be able to insure.
Is that something like, kind of like the Lexus report or something like that?
Also, LexisNexis is what you're talking about, and it's similar, but a little different. They can access LexisNexis, but it's not the same.
Okay.
Employers, especially if you work in the financial field, they have the ability to pull your credit and look. And some state agencies, affiliated organizations, just depending on where you work, or whether it's like SLED or HUD, some of those organizations that are state or national organizations can look at credit too. So we want to talk a little about something called risk-based pricing. Don't get so fixed up on the term, because all that means is that your interest rates will be determined based on your credit. So a lender is taking the risk when they lend us money. They're initiating some risk because they don't know if they'll get paid back. So because of that, if I'm more risky than you on credit, then I'm going to get a higher interest rate than you will, because you're more likely to pay back versus me. I ain't looking too good on paper. So they must tell you, if they're looking at your credit, let's just say you applied and you got denied, they must tell you what credit score they used, and they can send you a copy of what's in the report and what they looked at to make their decision. And that's just called an adverse action. So I know we're talking about credit, and nowadays you need credit. You have to have it just to live in a lot of ways. Not having credit can be just as bad as having bad credit today. But let's just say you're getting too many credit offers, you're getting too much in the mail. Anybody getting a credit card in the mail? Today, probably this morning. So if you don't want to receive them, you can opt out. You can do it for 5 years, or you can do it permanently. I have some information on our table back here about the opt-out number. It's just a number you call, and you can just choose which one, whether you want to opt out forever, or if you want to just do it for 5 years. So you still may get some offers. It just depends on who's sending it out. But you can always opt back in if you decide you want to get those pre-screened mailings again. But we can't opt out of having a credit report. Still have to have a credit report. You're just opting out of receiving pre-screened offers in the mail. So we're going to kind of just go in sections here, but that's just the general basis of what is credit. So the key takeaway: your credit history can affect your access to credit, loans, jobs, housing, insurance, and all kind of other services. So understanding your rights helps you know how to protect your credit history. So we got down what is credit, what is a credit report. Now we're gonna look at scores. Why are the scores so important? So the scores, kind of like we talked about, is just a number calculated off of the information in your report. And the higher the number generally equals the better the credit history. Like we talked about, it just predicts the likelihood of your payment. And the two biggest factors that affect your credit history are how you pay. So your payment history is 35% of your credit score. It's the biggest chunk of this pie, and we're gonna get to it on the screen. The next portion is the credit utilization rate. All that means is how much credit are you using? You have a credit card, but are you maxing that credit card out? How much debt do you have on your credit are the two biggest factors in your credit scores.
Excuse me, when did the credit score come in? Because I'm from a time where you can be on the job for a year and you're consistent. When I bought my first car from Richard Kelly, I was on the job for a year.
Yeah.
And there was. So then scores came along, some scores were not, I wonder when.
It's been around for a while,
It's
yeah.
been around for a while.
Yeah, it's heavily now because, we've had legislation changes, and especially after debt crisis issues, you want to make sure that people's credit or are using credit responsibly.
Well, I was told at one point in time it was to even or make the credit utilization more people, a more fair-based system is the scores, but like she said, they up and down.
Well, yeah, we're gonna talk a little bit about it, about why they might be up and down some. So just some basics of credit score. There's multiple scores, and this kind of will start talking a little bit about why you see variances in your scores. So FICO is the main credit score that most people are gonna use. That stands for Fair Isaac Corporation. It's a private kind of system. All they give us are the percentages that make up your credit score. But I can't tell you if you pay this off, it's gonna give you 25 points. FICO is private, they don't give that information out. But they do tell us the basics, the big picture, what affects the credit score. But FICO is what most of your banks, credit unions, anybody who's reviewing your credit, they're mostly gonna use FICO.
What is it?
We're gonna talk about it, that's coming next. So Vantage Score is free, and this is where a lot of people get confused at. Because if you're using stuff like Credit Karma or the free resources, that's not a FICO score, that's a Vantage Score. And Vantage Score is not used by the banks. So you just gotta remember, there's multiple credit scores out there. But we wanna focus on FICO because the people who are giving you credit are using FICO. Vantage Score is good to use as a point of reference. Credit Karma you can use to make sure your accounts are good, but don't take that score as your FICO score. Because anytime you get a FICO score, you're usually gonna have to pay for it because it's a private model. And they're gonna charge anybody who pulls a FICO score for it. But if it's a Vantage Score, you can get that anywhere, it's gonna be free, just don't take that. If you see a 900 Vantage Score, FICO only goes up to 850. So those two are already naturally different. So don't think that one equals the other. I'd like to talk a little bit about this insurance credit scores. Tons of them, but just try to focus on FICO when it comes to your credit. So this is the pie chart that we want to talk about. The two biggest pieces here, 65% of your credit score is how you pay. So the more you pay on time, the more you keep your accounts current, the less collections you have, the less things that have late payments, so 30 days, 60 days, the better it would be for your credit. The less you owe, the better it would be for your credit. So if you have debt that you're paying down or debt that you're paying off, I know we had a question about paying off a credit card and it lowering the scores. I guarantee that even if it might have lowered it, I guarantee if you will keep going, it's gonna go higher than those scores were before because the portion of this one is 30% of the score. 65% is the biggest chunk. And I can't explain why you might have seen that drop. I don't know, because was it something else going on? Was there a new account? There's a lot of different factors because there's 5 things that go into the calculation of the credit score. So if you open up a new credit account, or if somebody pulled your credit, that's 10% that can affect your score. A credit mix, if you have a mortgage, if you have what's called an installment loan, which is usually, a mortgage is considered an installment loan, but like a personal loan, those are considered installment loans. If you have, and when they say credit mix, they mean having a mix between a mortgage, a personal or installment loan, credit cards, which are revolving. I heard somebody say revolving. That is revolving credit. So you want to have a mix of not just a bunch of personal loans. You want to stay away from a bunch of finance companies on your credit, because those will affect your credit score because you don't have a good credit mix. You want to have a balance of everything on the credit. And how long you've had credit affects your credit scores too. So that's 15% of your credit score. You can't control.
Some of the finance companies you may have, they don't report.
So if it doesn't report, it's not on the credit. So you just kind of, you're paying it, but nobody knows you're paying it. So it's not really helping you credit-wise. But you know, and we can kind of get in there because, you know, the finance companies, we did a presentation on how much their interest, the average interest they charge is like 180%. So, you know, you can kind of get away from them anyway and go to a traditional bank that will actually report to all three, then you get credit for that. But versus then, nobody even knows it as far as credit-wise. But that's the credit mix. You want to just always remember this when it comes to your credit scores. These are how they're calculating those scores. So there are other credit scores, like we talked about the Vantage score, the other options. FICO is the main one you want to focus on. But if you ever turn down because of your credit, you have the right to see what credit scores they use. They have to send you that, and you have the right to see what your scores are. So the big thing is always we want to make sure that our credit scores accurately reflect what we're doing every day. We want the reports to represent us where we are, because we understand that we can have bad credit and mistakes happen in our credit. But if that's not who you are today, you want to start working on that to get your credit report to reflect who you are. Because when they look at your credit, they don't know you personally. They don't know your story. They don't know what you went through. They just see a social, a name, address, and credit history. So they're treating everybody the same. But that's why you want to spend that time making sure that your credit is free of errors, that it's accurate, and then just checking and making sure that it represents where you are. So this is just a visual of the scores. 850 is your max FICO score. 300 is your low. I've seen lower than 300, but that's what they say the range is. So 300 is considered poor. 3 to 579 is considered poor. Fair, 580 to 669. Good, 670 to 739. And once you hit the very good of 740s, it really doesn't matter anymore. But this is just, there's no point. I mean, if you want to have a perfect FICO score, go for it. But when somebody's looking at you, they're going to consider it the same. But this is just kind of a visual what to remember as far as score base. And no matter where you are and what tier you're in currently, you can move up this ladder. It may take time, but just because you may be in fair credit right now, doesn't mean that you can't get to very good. It just may take time, and you want to start reflecting and changing the things in your credit. So that's kind of our wrap up on the scores portion. So just to take away, you can take steps to improve and manage your credit scores. And of course, the two biggest things, paying your bills on time and keeping low debt will always be the two biggest things you can do. So let's transition. We talked about what is credit. We talked about how to get it. We talked about what credit scores are. Now we want to talk about how to get our credit reports and kind of how to understand them. So one way to get your credit report, annualcreditreport.com. That's the only free version. Do not get it confused with freecreditreport.com or any of the other commercials that play off of this. They're usually set up to be temporarily free, but then they're going to charge you after the trial period. This is government-based. It's federally mandated. Annual Credit Report is the only place you can go to get your free credit report. Now, that's not a score with it. It's going to have your report. So just keep in mind, if you want to get the score, you're going to have to pay for it because that's FICO. But because of COVID, it used to be you can only get this credit report once a year. So I always tell people, instead of just pulling all three, like we talked instead of pulling all three at one time, I used to tell people, let's start with one. Let's just say Equifax. Span it out 4 months. So let's just say in January you pull your Equifax. Then in May you pull Experian. Then in September you pull TransUnion. Now January is back around for the next year, you can pull your Equifax again. So instead of just pulling all three January of 2022, you wouldn't be able to see it again until January 2023. But if you stagger them, you can see your report throughout the year and have access to it. But because of COVID, you don't even have to worry about that right now. Until December 31st, you can get a free weekly report every week. So I would recommend doing that now, because you only have until December before it's gonna go back to doing once a year again. So take advantage of that while you can. So we already mentioned it, but just watch out for people who play off of the name annual credit report. Free credit report, they used to have the commercials, trying to think of other ones, but they will, because they'll try to match the name closely and get people confused so they can go to the one that pays. Annual, because it's only free once a year. Annualcreditreport.com. So you also have rights to receive additional free credit reports. If you receive any kind of public assistance, if you're unemployed and you're looking for a job, if you've been a victim of identity theft, if your state allows you to have a free one, or if you've been denied credit like we've talked about before. Again, we got additional handouts out there about steps to take if you're included in this list at all, and you want to get more than just your one free. Of course, right now, you can get a weekly, but after that, we have some information on the table about what you can do to get additional if you qualify here. So, I want y'all to participate with me for a second. Has everybody seen their credit scores before? Has anybody not looked at a credit report? Like just gone through it, looked through it? Anybody not done it? Don't be ashamed. Okay, don't be ashamed. It's just us. It's just us. So, when you've gone through them, has everybody understood it?
No.
Okay. So on your tables, you should have something that's called it's a sample credit report. We're going to go through it together. If y'all have questions, because I don't want this to just be go home and figure it out. While we're here, I want to try to explain it. So this is a consumer credit report. When you pull one of your own from annualcreditreport.com, it'll look like this. There are different versions that the mortgage companies and the credit companies use, but we're going to focus on this one. So, example is Ray here, but I'm going to ask you some questions on him. So Ray wants to buy a house. He has some money set aside for a down payment. He attended a home buyer education class. He knew his credit was important to get a mortgage. He didn't realize his credit reports and the scores were connected. He's never ordered a credit report before. He just learned about having the right to get his free credit report. So he just pulled this, never looked at it before, like many people in the world. So while we're here, let's go through it a little bit. So on this front page, do y'all all have it in front of you? I know it's in black and white, it's front to back, have to save on paper, but let's go through it. So it'll have the date when it was pulled and the time. So it's kind of broken into sections. Section 1 will be your information. So it's going to be your name, address, social, date of birth. Employer information is there only because when you apply for credit, they're usually going to ask who you work with or what your income is, and that files into the credit report. You can put messages there, so if you've been a fraud victim, you can usually put, I put a victim of fraud on there. But that's just kind of consumer information that have previous addresses on there. Public record is the portion where it might have bankruptcies, child support, tax liens, anything that went unpaid and went to court can show up on your credit here. So that's called public record. Anything that went to court and was more than just an unpaid bill can show on a public record. The next section is the collections. Collections are unpaid bills that have gone into an uncollectible state. So when it gets 180 days past due, which is 6 months, if it gets that far past due, they have to charge that off. That's why a lot of times you'll see it called a charge off as uncollectible debt. And so then they will sell that debt often. Sometimes they'll keep it, but sell it to another company who will collect it. And now they're responsible for getting it from you because this company sold it to them. That's a whole another class in itself. But we kind of, we'll be here to take questions at the end if y'all want to ask. We'll try our best. It's a very legal situation, but we'll try to answer some questions about that too. But that'll be your collection section. On the back is section number 4, and it says trades. I don't want y'all confused about this terminology. If you see a trade, all it means is a credit account or a credit line. It's a line of credit. They just call them trade lines. But his is listed as ZXY Bank. For us it could have been Founders or any of the local banks around. Those are called trade lines and will show on your credit, and it's going to show your payment history. So it's going to show how much you borrowed, how much of that credit did you actually use. So they may have gave you a credit limit of $4,000, but the high balance is how much did you put on that credit line. It'll tell you how long that term is for, how long you're supposed to pay it back. It'll tell you what the payment amount is. It'll keep a record of every payment that you make. So if y'all look where it says payment history, and it says 9/17, and it's okay, 10/17, okay, and you keep going to March 18, it says okay, but on April 18, it says 60 days late. And then 5/18, it was 30 days late. So it keeps a history of everything that's happening with that account. So anybody who looks at your credit can go back and see if you ever had a late payment. Usually on the credit report will show for the last 2 years, but they do have access to those things. And section 5 is the inquiry section, and that's just anybody who pulled your credit. So for this one, 123 Mortgage Company pulled the credit. Inquiries will stay on the credit for 2 years, but they only affect the score for 1 year. So you want to try to only apply for credit on an as-needed basis. You don't want to just be applying just to apply.
But how can you get the inquiry resolved if you only actually apply with anybody?
If you haven't applied with anybody and you still got an inquiry, you need to start filing fraud and victim, because they only pull it. It only should show on your credit if you apply. But if you didn't apply, then you need to go file a police report. We're gonna talk more about some options to do about fraud here too. But there's some things you need to start doing if those aren't you. Now, if you forgot about them.
Now, see, I got a letter yesterday from Cascade, which was, they turned around and got my old address on there. I turned around and called the guy yesterday about it. He said it was when I went to Clayton home last year. The robot the system turned around, went back in to pull accounts and everything, more or less is a follow-up. But they had my old address, but I'm at another address now, and I'm like, how did you get my new address? And you turn around, send it to my old address. And that's when he turned around, send it. But it's all kind of magazines that's turned around his own mind. Never heard of them.
Magazines?
Yeah.
Now they can.
Midnight, Velvet, all of them different kind of magazines.
Yeah, so we're gonna have to set some time to talk. Y'all gonna have to come to the table, because I know credit is always the one where everybody kind of like has their own person. I'll take a little bit, then we got it, because they only gave me an hour. But go ahead.
They just called me last week about a loan to go to school. And I ain't do it. I didn't do it.
So did you get a loan, or did they just call?
I think somebody used my name. Because they already called me about it, to pay it back. I don't think that's her name.
No, you don't. That's another fraud situation for sure. That's,
I got one better.
well, I hope it ain't better.
Only me. I went to school. I said, hey, I know I'm supposed to use up my grant money because I'm a lifetime student. I was. And they said yes. They said you got I have a little bit of Pell Grant and the lottery. Okay, so I'm fussing about my classes. I need to be out of here by now. And find out that I owe them some money. But I've never signed anything. They won't give me my diploma, but they want me to take out a loan, but I said, okay, well, give me enough money that I can get, pay off all my bills. And they said, no, we can't do that. But they won't give me my diploma. And
Okay, yeah, so,
I need some help.
the table right here, when you walk out, come do, cause some of that is like very, and I'm gonna have to ask you more questions,
Yeah.
and just for the sake of the time, I'm gonna keep going. But yeah, please come to the table, we'll be there for an hour, I'll try to hit all of y'all, we'll try to go through it all.
You like to stand there and do a slick out.
So I'm gonna ask y'all some questions, I'm gonna do a quick quiz on this, cause I wasn't just talking, just talking.
Okay.
Okay, first question. Who does this credit report belong to? Y'all know it. That's Ray. Where does he live? Where does Ray live at? Okay, there we go. That's his address. Now, does Ray have anything in collections? Okay. What does he have in collections? My Town Collections, that's right. My Town Collections. Is he paying all of his bills on time? Yes. Yes. Right now, he is, but y'all, I like where you were at. Yes, there were some late payments. Now, that just means on his current bills, the collection is no longer an active account, it's a collection. So that was a little tricky, but yes, on his actual open accounts, those are current as of now. Let's see. What kind of credit does he have open? It's a bank, and we talked about it very briefly. Revolving, that's it. That's a revolving account that usually just means a credit card. Has Ray ever filed a bankruptcy? I hear some no's, I hear some yeses.
Yes.
That's right, he did file a bankruptcy, and that's on section 2 in the public records. Remember, that's where your bankruptcies, child supports, tax stuff right there to show that. So yeah, he did file a chapter 7 bankruptcy. Let's look at it. So what does the inquiry section, number 5, what does that tell you? What can we gather from that portion? That's right. And where did he go? What is he trying to buy? A house. That's right. That's right. And that's just a throw out. What can he do to keep maintaining good credit? And what's the other biggest things? And can pay his stuff down. That's good. That's good. That's good. All right. So how can you get your scores? At Regenesis, we are able to pull a soft pull. It's the same one that a mortgage company uses. So if y'all are ever interested, you can always come by our office. There is a charge. We'll talk about it. Who said that?
A mortgage? That ain't no soft pull.
A mortgage isn't, but I said us. Yeah, us. So we can do it with, so we can offer the same credit report a mortgage company produces. But ours is a soft pull. It even says at the top, soft touch. It's a soft pull because we're not looking for credit from you. I can't give you any credit. I can't give you a loan. But the mortgage company can. So theirs is going to be a hard pull. You're absolutely right. But if you wanted a soft pull, you wanted to see what your FICO scores are compared to how a mortgage is going to view it, we can do it. But that's just one option. You can also, your credit card companies, those usually will have them. I'm gonna hit both of y'all right quick, okay. When you have a regular score, when you get denied, they have that option. MyFICO.com, you can get a credit report. Like I said, you're gonna have to pay for the score, but you can see it. Bandit score is free. You can also go directly to Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. They can give you those scores, but you will usually have to pay for those.
So there's no such thing as a quick way to do this, like some people are offering, or some companies offer, I can get your credit to 140 days.
Yeah, you talking about credit repair,
Whatever.
We got a section on that. It's coming. It's coming. It's coming.
Okay.
Do you happen to know the difference in how many points it deducts between a soft pull and a hard pull?
So a soft pull doesn't deduct any points because it's not pulling to extend credit. So it won't even show with the credit bureaus. So it's like those offers of mail you get. When you get an offer in the mail, they didn't pull your credit. They just did, they have this bank of like, it's considered a pool of people who may have a certain score. But they can't pull it without authorization for you if you get a free offer in the mail. So with us, it's not a actual hard pull because we're not trying to give you anything. It's just for credit purposes. So we had to get set up, approved. They had to come inspect and make sure that we're not lending credit. And so when it's a soft pull, it won't show. I know you had a quick one.
Yes, sir. I heard you mention you would charge a fee. So what are y'all charging? Well, I probably missed your introduction and I apologize.
Yeah, so
So what are y'all?
right, so FICO, because they charge, they require anybody who's set up under them to have to also charge. So it's $40, but you know, that's why I say it's not the only option. You can also use these. But anytime you get your FICO score, unfortunately, it's usually gonna be a cost with it. But that's why I always try to tell people, don't focus on the score so much, focus on what's in your report. Because if you can get those things fixed, the score will just be a reflection of what's in your report. But there are ways to access your score if you want it. And you don't need to get a credit pull every month to see your scores. If you want to know, maybe you can do it once a year and then, you know, check again another 6 to 8 months if you feel like it. You don't need to know your scores, but like credit card companies are usually giving them out free now. They may be a point or 3 variants, but that's kind of a free way to get those scores if you ever wanted to see where you are FICO-wise.
But what would be the advantage of somebody like coming to Genesis? What would, why would?
Well, I don't want to sell, I just want to present, but what we are is just homeownership counseling. So not everybody knows what to do to get ready to own a home. Not everybody knows what it takes to buy. Not everybody knows how to manage their money and finances. So most of the time, a lender is there to make money off the loan. If you're not ready, a lot of times they'll tell you come back when you are. Realtors will help you for sure, but a lot of times they want to see that you're pre-approved first before they show you homes because they need to know what price range you're in. So a lot of times it's that gap of people not knowing where to go, what to do. So we try to fill in that gap of like, hey, you're not quite there. Let's talk about how to get there and the path to get to where you're trying to go, because we don't have a financial interest in it. It's just, these are the tips and tools you need to do to get ready. So when you are ready to go out in the home, you know these terms, you know your credit, you've been working on your budget, and now you're a little more prepared. But again, I didn't want to say it. So the key takeaway, I know section 3 went a little long. Checking my time, I think you're still all right. So you should be able to at least get your credit report once every year, even if it's just a report, and right now because of COVID, you can get them weekly. All right, so I know this one's gonna be the tricky part. I know it's gonna get it going. A lot of this y'all gonna have to just come talk about, but just hit the basics. Disputing errors in your credit. We've looked at how to get the scores. We looked at what's in our credit. We talked about how to raise them. Now what do we do if we find errors? So, errors on your credit report. They can be identity errors. It can be errors about the status of an account you have not showing correctly. They could have input something wrong. It could have been a data management error. Balance errors, you owe less than what's being reported, or outdated information. Those are all errors on your credit. So, we're gonna hit the basics. This one can get very deep, but we're gonna just try to talk about it. So, negative information generally can only be reported for 7 years. So, like we talked about, hard inquiries will stay, or hard pulls stay on the credit for 2 years, but they only affect the score for 1. And some bankruptcies are an exception. If you do a Chapter 7, don't worry about the details, but a Chapter 7 can stay on there for 10 years, whereas a Chapter 13, which means you just kept your debt and paid it down, can usually stay only for 7. So let's talk about the 7-year rule. It can be confusing, but it generally starts 180 days, 6 months after you stop paying the debt. So, all August 2018, you have an account. That account is now 30 days past due. But July 2018 is really where the onset started, because in August it's now considered 30 days. But July was the time where the first payment kind of stopped happening. So now that's kind of your 30-day clock. So July plus 6 months. July plus 180 days. Because it's every 30 days is gonna go 60 days late, 90 days late, 120 days, 150 days, then 180 days. Once it gets to 180 days late, that is considered non-collectible. They're usually gonna charge that debt off and kind of close out your account. Doesn't mean that you don't owe the money, it just means that they can't get it from you. So now they could go to legal routes of trying to go to get a judgment, trying to make you pay. It doesn't always happen, but that is an option. So when you think about that 7 years, that 7 years would technically be from July, then the 180 days. So July 2018 plus 180 days is January 2019. January 2019 plus the 7 years is now when that starts. So that's kind of how you calculate it. So a lot of times you might think I might have stopped paying in July 2018. It should be off in July 2025. Well, you got to think that's when it started, but now you have to go 6 months for it to be a collection or a charge off, and then 7 years from that 180 days. I know it sounds confusing. Just remember July or whenever it started, add 6 months. Then from that date, add 7 years. Yes, ma'am.
Can they hold it off for 20 years?
Legally they cannot. Legally that cannot happen. I know we can. I know it. It's gonna be. I know they sell debt and they try and it transfers, and I know y'all. It's y'all gonna kill me. They gonna get me fired. They ain't gonna let me talk again.
Listen, like I said, I'm gonna set you there the truth. I had a car repossessed. And I lived in North Carolina, I lived in South Carolina. If I move to North Carolina, I live in Sue. If I move to South Carolina, I live in Sue. For 20 years. 20. Finally, the man said, I can't believe this. No, ma'am, you don't owe nothing. You ain't got nothing, you don't owe nothing, that's done.
Now, was it on your credit report for 20 years, or were they just trying to collect the money for 20 years?
I didn't check.
So now just because you don't pay don't mean they can't try to get that money. That's legal. They can try to collect money, but it's reporting it on the credit report, because technically when we sign a debt, we're obligating that we'll pay it back. So it's not illegal to try to collect on a debt that was unpaid. They can go to court, like it's a whole legal, I wish we had SC Legal Services up here, because there's a whole legal thing. There's a statute of limitations. In South Carolina, I don't want to get too legal, I'm not a lawyer, that's my disclaimer. There's usually 3 years where they can do something to legally, take you to court for the debt. After that, they still may owe it, but they might not be able to legally attach you to it, try to chase you for it. But that doesn't mean that you don't legally owe it. So yeah, that's a little out of my realm, and I say that to camera. I'm not a lawyer, but I'm not trying to be a lawyer. But I want to try to answer those questions the best I can. So it's not illegal to collect the debt, but it is illegal to try and keep reporting that for 20 years. 7 years is the rule. But again, please come to the table so we can talk. Yeah, so we can try to knock it out. No, because we can give an hour. We can give y'all individualized time, and we can talk through every specifics.
I was saying, even if they, if you owe that in collection, if they can't get it from you, they will turn it over and it will become income for you. They will charge, give you a 1099-C end of the year. If they're gonna report that to the IRS, say, I tried to collect $10,000 from this person, they're not giving it to me, so therefore, I'm charging off my bill and I'm giving it to the IRS. So now I'm giving you, so now that is some income. So even though it's on your report and say, I'm not gonna pay it, they can, I can say you can go to the legal route to get that. Just keep that in mind, you will have to report it on your income tax.
With that, Dan, so
already got it. Now they turned into a tax claim. Y'all are a trip. It is. Y'all ask good questions.
The IRS still have that 1090, well, they don't have the information saying that they charge property here. So even if you don't file taxes, they know that you have $10,000, that you owe tax. That's right.
Rule of law when it comes to taxes.
Y'all
I
still are
think they're
asking good
penny,
questions.
and the IRS won't. I think from where they're to the 1800s, they have a rule of thumb.
They went to 1800. Y'all are asking really good questions for sure. Y'all are making it fun.
The reason why I know that I'm also a tax preparer, I've seen that coming through, and I'm with family members that, and they may send it to you after you file your taxes, but they don't send you that 1099.
I better see a pack table after this. I better see a line so we can. You're right. You're right. All right. So now we're gonna talk a little bit about medical debt. There's been a lot of changes with that. A lot of changes that will be good for the consumer coming starting July 1st of this year. So that's right. It affects everybody. So previously, you had 6 months for a medical collection to show as a collection. So let's just say you went to the doctor, didn't pay the bill. It usually takes 6 months for it to show on your credit. Now that's going to be extended to a year. So I'm gonna just kind of run through it. So effective July 1st of this year, anytime you pay off a medical collection, let's just say it hit on your credit, and I've seen them as small as $6. So let's just say you pay it off. Now, instead of it showing a paid collection as it would before, it's not even going to show if you paid it. So it won't even be on the credit report, which is going to help a lot of people because now it won't even be there, which will help your scores go up. So that's one change. Also, July of this year, that time period is going to change like we talked about from 6 months to a year. Now, next year, they still haven't drilled down the exact date, but it's kind of just saying first half of 2023. Medical collections under $500 won't even show on the credit. So if it's $499, $500, and it's in that threshold, it won't even be on the credit right now. You can get credit medical collections as low as $6, $5 that pop up on people's credit. It hurts their credit, and it's over $5. So, but starting 2023, if it's under $500, it won't even show. Again, it doesn't mean that you don't owe the debt, but we're just talking about what a credit report will reflect. So that's some positive things that will be changing for everybody in the room, starting July for some of it, and then 2023 for a lot of the other ones. So if we got errors on our credit reports, there's 2 main ways to dispute those. You can go online, and you can do each credit bureau individually. You usually want to dispute with some proof and not just say this ain't mine. It may not be, but try to get information to back it up because it's going to make your dispute more successful. You can also dispute by mail. So what do we need? We got sample dispute letters out there too on the table, but yeah, we got those too. So what do you want to include in your dispute letter? You want to have your name and address. You want to have the clear description of the item you're disputing and the reason for each dispute. And we can try to get y'all these PowerPoints too, so you can have that information. But you want to be clear in detail about what you're disputing, why it's disputed, and attaching some proof with it. And then you want to request for that to be corrected. So if the information is wrong, you want it to be corrected. If it's just completely incorrect and erroneous, you want it deleted. So when you're sending proof and your additional information, don't send your actual originals. Make copies because you're mailing this out if you do it by the mail way. If you do it online, you can upload it. But never send your originals because you're going to need that. You want to send a certified receipt via U.S. mail because when you do it that way, somebody has to sign for it, which means they received it. And then from the date of them receiving it, you usually have 30 to 45 days for them to review your dispute. Like I said, if any receipts that you have is something like if something's showing is unpaid, but you paid it, you want to have receipts of that information, account information. You just want to back up your stance. Images of a check, screenshots of an online bill payment or a transaction, credit card statements, just the stuff you need to back up your standings. So after you file that dispute, they're gonna get it. And this is by the mail option. The online works similar, but they'll get it, and then they're gonna review it, and then they're gonna send you a letter back. It should be in that 30 to 45 day window. It's either gonna say, you know, hey, we've corrected your information. If it's incorrect, it's supposed to be deleted. But you know, just read back at what they say, because you wanna go back and recheck it, and they should give you an updated report to reflect that change. If somebody denies you credit because of an error, you can also request that that place get your updated credit report. So if you were trying to buy a house or a car and they denied you because of a mistake that you didn't make, they can send the updated credit report to them too. So section 4, if you find errors on your credit report, file a dispute right away. These are Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion are all private companies. They get paid. Unfortunately, they're not in the business of making sure your information is right. They're just in the business of reporting what they get reported. So if you have an account with Bank of America is gonna report that to the credit bureaus. So it's on us to make sure that what's being reported is correct, and we wanna make sure we're doing our due diligence of keeping proof of payment, all of our information, account statuses. I know it's a lot of work, but because their job isn't to make sure it's right, we gotta go that extra step to make sure that when we apply for credit, and when we're doing things with credit, we want to make sure it's accurate and reflects where we are. So that's kind of the section 4 takeaway. This section 5, I'll be done. I got 8 minutes. I think we can get it. So we talked about how to dispute errors. We talked about how to get credit reports. We talked about what a score is. We talked about the details of looking at a credit report, how to look at it. So now we fixed all the stuff. How do we continue to maintain credit? How do we build it? How do we repair it? So, getting a review on your credit reports is always the first step. As often as you can, just kind of keep a check on it. It's just like working out or eating healthy. If you stay on it, it doesn't get as hard if you stay on top of it. Dispute any errors. Pay all of your bills on time and as agreed. And that's why I say budget and credit go hand in hand, because you don't want to take out too much credit that you can't manage it financially, because it will show up in the credit report. Those two go hand in hand. Use as little of your credit limit as possible. Like we said, 30% of your scores is just how much debt you have. The lower that debt, the higher your scores will be. Use a credit building plan. Don't just get credit just because you feel like you want it. It needs to be a part of the game you're playing. There's two sets of people. There's people that use credit, that let credit use them, and there's the other side that uses credit for themselves. You don't want credit to use you. You want to use credit. You want to use it for what you're trying to do in life as a stepping stone of where you're trying to go. You want that house. You want that car. Credit is a tool, but we don't want to be used by credit. If you got an old account that you've been paying well, keep it open. Just because that will continue to report. If you close that account, it'll stay on there for 10 years and then it's going to stop helping you. If it's open, it's going to continue to report and help you out. Like we said, apply for credit only if you need it. Negotiating different terms, you can call and change due dates if it works for you. You can negotiate interest rates on credit cards. If you've done it well for a while, you can call and say, hey, I want to look at lowering my interest rate. Can you do that? A lot of times they'll offer you an additional credit line. Now, just because they offer you more credit doesn't mean you have to use it, but it will help your credit scores the higher available balance you have. Doesn't mean I'm saying go run up your credit card, but if they say, hey, Ms. Jackson, we want to give you an extra $5,000 on your credit limit, take it, because it will help your credit, but do not use that credit card as an extension of income. That $5,000 is not money for you. That's simply playing the credit game. So I want to make sure that the two always go together. You cannot have credit without managing your money well. A lot of times, if you made a mistake, an honest mistake, you forgot about a bill, you can call and ask for what's called a goodwill deletion. That just says, hey, I've had this account for 4 years, I haven't had a late payment, had a death in the family, something happened, can I ask for this to be deleted, like that late payment? And a lot of times they'll do it, they don't have to, but those are just tools that you can use. If you don't have credit, there's a lot of things, especially I'm gonna talk about Experian Boost, that allows you to use alternative credit. So your rent, TV bills, internet bills, cell phones, electric stuff keep records of how you pay your stuff if you're trying to build credit. Especially like there's a new program with Experian Boost. Now it will only show on Experian's credit report, but it's a start. So it allows you to link bills that don't normally show on credit, because you know your internet bill usually won't show on your credit report unless you don't pay it, or your TV bill won't show. But if you can link the account and start getting credit for some of those things. So just because you don't have established credit yet, keep your alternative credit history, keep good records of that stuff. Because some people may still use that and say, okay, we know you don't have much credit, but here's proof from your landlord that you haven't missed a payment in 20 years, 10 years. That might be able to work in your favor. It's not as popular. I'm not gonna lie and act like alternative credit is just everybody takes it, but it's just another tool that you can use if you're trying to build. Building credit, you can get a secured credit card. You can get a credit building loan. Secured credit cards are different from unsecured. Of course, unsecured is just you got a credit card offer in the mail. You say, I want it, they send it to you, you can go spend free. A secured credit card is backed by the bank, so you will have to create a savings account and put money in that account, and then they'll give you a credit card attached to that account. So if you have a savings account for $300, you'll get a credit card for $300. If you miss a payment, they'll pull it from what you have, but they're more likely to give you credit because they know that they can get their money back. Credit building loan is similar. A lot of local banks offer it. What a credit building loan is, it's a similar thing. So they might give you a loan for $500, but they're not giving you $500 in your pocket. What it is you're paying them $25 a month. Now you're not paying them, you're technically paying yourself, and it's going to your own money. You may do it for a year, and then after that year, you get your money, but the bank has been reporting that every month as if you've been paying it as a loan. So that's a way that it can help you build credit, because you're actually paying yourself and the bank is giving you credit for that. So those are some options that people will work with if you don't have much credit, because they feel better because you are putting the money up. An authorized user, we want to talk about this. If you are an authorized user or somebody's an authorized user, it can help. But I'm going to talk about the other side too. If that person misses a payment, it will affect you. Authorized user is basically a joint account. So if that person, let's just say your mom got wonderful credit history, she puts you on as an authorized user, it will help your credit. But the minute she misses a payment, you have missed the payment. So these are just tools. I'm giving you tools, but also I gotta tell you what that tool can do.
And I've done this, we call it piggyback writing, and I've helped my brothers. They've attached the stuff, but I get the credit card, I activate it, and I shred it. I cut it, and you never have that card, so it doesn't affect me.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. Being an authorized user doesn't mean that they have to have access to the card. They can, you can, like you said, you can cut that card up, nobody can have access to it. But whoever the primary is, you want to make sure that whoever the primary is on that account, if they're about to miss a payment, tell them to call me so I can get removed, and then we can go back on. If they're having financial issues, they need to let you know, because as soon as it hits 30 days late, it's going to affect you. So it can help, but I want to give you the other side too. Cosigner is the same thing. If you need help, and let's just say you don't have credit and you're trying to get a car, a lot of times they'll say, hey, where's a cosigner? Give me a cosigner and I can do it. It might help you get what you need, but just know that you are affecting the person who's cosigning, just like the person who's cosigning is affecting you. You always got to, once you add somebody else onto your credit, it becomes joint. If they mess up, you mess up. If you mess up, they mess up. And you got like credit card stores, gas stations. Again, you're being billed. Hey, you want to sign up for a credit card and save $10, today. Again, don't go into debt to save $10. It's not worth it. But if you're trying to build credit, it might be a good start. But again, we don't ever want to add a bunch of debt. We don't want to get a store card just to save $3 on the purchase. If you have credit, if you've already established that, is not necessary. If you're trying to build it though, it can be a way just to kind of get on the map and start building credit. But again, work on your budget. because your managing of your money and your credit go hand in hand. We're gonna keep drilling it down again. Pay on time. That's really the biggest thing you can do. Continue to pay down your debt. Keep your balances, the proportion of how much credit you use to your credit limit. So if you have a credit limit of $1,000, if you use $50, pay the bill off in full. Don't keep a balance. Don't allow that, because now you're paying interest. Now that money, that $10 is turned to 20, which is turned to 30. Only use your car as what you can afford to pay off. Use it, pay the bill off in full, and that way you'll get full credit for paying on time and having a low balance. We don't want you paying additional money in interest just because.
Well, what if you like, say for instance, your bill is on the 11th of the month, and you pay like half of the bill at the beginning of the month, then before the 11th, you pay the other half.
So that's still paying it off in full. Yeah, because what I mean is like, you have a credit card, you use $100 on the credit card. They'll send you a bill saying, hey, you know,
Pay $40.
pay $10, $20 minimum payment, you're good. A lot of people could do it. And so now you gotta remember that $100 you used, you only paid down 10, you didn't even pay out the full 10 because you have credit cards notoriously high for interest. So you probably only paid about $2 towards it. Now that $10 is turned to an additional 8 plus what you did before. So you only used 100, but now you have 118. So you know what you're doing is good. Like if you want to break that up, as long as when the bill is due, it's paid off, then you avoid interest, you avoid late fees, you avoid adding debt, and all of those things help your credit. Apply for credit only as needed. Avoid actions or inactions that are going to create new entries, such as not paying on time or paying late. Pay your taxes, any child support, keep those things paid because they can go on a credit report. Check your credit reports regularly, dispute errors, keep good financial records. If you need help, you can go to places like us. There's other community organizations out there, certified financial planners, the HUD, there's a ton of resources out there. We're gonna wrap it up. I'm gonna talk about it because I know somebody mentioned it. Credit repair. When you're seeking help, there will always be people out there who can provide a service of some kind. You have to ask yourself, can I do this myself? Or do I need this service? Credit repairs promise to fix your credit for a fee. Debt consolidation is, they're trying to get your debt down from like 10 cards to maybe 1. So it's just, it's getting those loans down for you. It's trying to consolidate it from a bunch to 1. With debt consolidation, we gotta be careful, of course. If you can get your debt lower to a lower payment with lower interest rate and it saves you money, for sure, that makes sense. But you wanna be careful because it doesn't address the issue of what happened to accrue so much debt. So your balances are still gonna be the same, but you may just have it in one payment or maybe a lower interest rate. There's nothing wrong with debt consolidation, but just make sure that it makes sense financially. Because if they're gonna tell you open up a new card, but we're gonna roll all of this debt into one card, but the card has got a higher interest rate than the other ones, it doesn't make sense. You wanna always run the numbers on anything you do. Debt settlement is usually working with your creditors to lower your interest rates or change your payments. Like Anita was saying, if you have a credit card with $1,000 you've got behind, they sent you to a debt settlement service. That company can say, okay, pay us and we're going to pay them. And it's called a debt management plan. A lot of times you'll see people, before they go to bankruptcy, they might do a debt management plan first. So we hope nobody gets to that stage, but when you do that, let's just say you have a $10,000 credit card. They may settle for $7,000 and you pay it back slowly over time. But that $3,000 from 7 to 10 can be counted as income because they forgave that debt and it can be on your taxes. So just while y'all are looking for help, I just want to give you the tools and information to know, okay, is this right for me? Last one, credit repair. So credit repair in and of itself is a legal business. I can't say it's not legal, but there are laws created. Got some more stuff on the table for you. It's called the Credit Repair Organizations Act. Anybody who is engaging in credit repair should be following this law. What that says is they can't charge you up front for services. They can't They have to give you a contract, a signed contract about what their services will be, what they'll do. And if they do that, you have to have 3 days to opt out of that. So many people are popping up with credit repair services. I just want y'all to be armed with the tools to know what's legal, what's not legal. And they created the law because there's a bunch of illegality in credit repair. So anybody who promises to erase your bad credit, remove other negative information, get you a new ID, get you a new social, change your name, please stay away. Please stay away. Because you gotta remember, you're giving these people so much access. You're giving them your socials. You're giving them your address. You're giving them your name. You wanna be careful with your private information too. Anybody that promises fast and easy credit repair and says it's gonna be easy, I'll get you done, 30 days guaranteed. FICO doesn't tell us guaranteed scores. It just gives us percentages. We know actions, but we can't tell you you can pay this off. I can't tell you come to me and I'm gonna give you, I have you at 900 in 2 weeks. It's just not possible that I know of. Like we talked about, identity stay away. If they tell you to pay up front before you get any kind of services, that's a red flag. And if anybody doesn't tell you about the Credit Repair Organization Act or any of the legal things that were created to protect consumers, it's probably something to be careful about. Last thing, fraud, because I know we talked about that a little bit. There's fraud alerts you can put on your credit that last 4 years, an initial fraud alert. You can put it on your credit, got handouts for you. You can put it on there that says that, hey, if anybody wants to open up anything in your name, they have to call you first. That's an initial fraud alert. It blocks people from access to your credit. Active duty, if anybody's military, you can put on your credit that, hey, I am at service, so I can't be applying for credit while I'm active duty. So it allows you to opt out of credit offers. It lasts for a year, but you can add more time if needed. Extended fraud is usually for people who have been actual victims of identity theft. It can last 7 years. Usually requires you to provide a police report to show that, hey, you filed an active identity theft case, but it will stay on the credit for 7 years and nobody can access it without your approval. Credit freezes, it basically blocks people from opening up new accounts while you have a freeze on there. You can unlock it, you can change it, you can take it off, you can put it back on temporarily. If somebody needs to pull it for a job or something, it won't stop that, but it will stop new credit being opened while you have a freeze on there. And a credit lock is similar to a freeze, except you usually do it through an app like Equifax, Experian, they all have apps, and you usually have to pay for that service. But it basically just allows you to go on the app and say, hey, I'm gonna lock my credit, and then you can unlock it, but they kind of act the same.
If you want a bank fraud, you may not offer any kind of fraud alert
If the bank,
at bank.
so they should be sending you, let's just say the bank got hacked and you've been a victim of fraud, they are supposed to be sending you some free identity theft protection stuff out there. They are supposed to offer those services. But come see us. You know, I'm gonna wrap it up so they don't move me out. But that's the key takeaway for Station 5. Your credit history does not have to be your credit future. You can always change those things. So you just want to think about how you're gonna take action. What will you do? How will you start? Will you tell anybody what you're doing? Will you share those plans with anybody? And that's just kind of gonna wrap us up today. Thank y'all for being so engaged. We'll see y'all at the table. Chanel, I'm sorry. Oh, we still active. They messed nothing up. We're still good. I put my foot out. They're still working.